All right, welcome everyone
Welcome.
to the Kubernetes Cloud Native Security Meetup, and this is episode 2, right? Yeah. All right, let's see what we have for today. Let me share the agenda. All right, so we will get right into the Kubernetes security update with the three of us. I actually have an update this month. Yay. And then after that, we have Taylor Dolezal with us giving the best secrets are a secret. He's the CNCF ambassador and senior developer advocate at HashiCorp. So super excited to have him with us today. And then we also will be talking about DEI. We have Melia Mason with us. She's the president and co-founder of CyberDEI. So this is going to be an interactive conversation. So please don't forget to, ask questions. Let's see. We also have objectives. If you're just joining us for the first time with our meetups, we want to get the community together. So each second Thursday of each month, we run these meetups globally. And we definitely want to share knowledge. So call for papers. If any of you are interested in speaking, this is the call for papers link right there. And then you can also find banners with more information on the Twitch channel that you are on. Yeah, and then have fun. So at the end of the meetup, join us in our K8s lounge. We'll share the link to AirMe, and that's where we can network, talk to each other if you have more questions, and we can get to know each other.
Cool. So we move right in with how we're actually formatting this event, these meetup events. We kind of have a weird hybrid format, which I think, Tam, you coined the phrase hybrid. So it's gonna be a thing now.
I don't think I coined it, but
well, we're actually not quite there yet. We're on our way towards that. The idea being that I think we added London, Amsterdam, and Dublin to this one, right? Is that correct? That's correct. So welcome anybody from those locations that are watching this, which is great. And we've got various across the United States, and we're looking to expand. So if anybody's interested in once we're allowed to leave the house, which would be great, then we're going to start having live meetups in all the different locations that we've got. So it'll be part live, but part broadcast. So you'll be able to share experiences from guests from all over the world, and occasionally get to go to live ones as well. So I think it's gonna be pretty exciting. But starting this all virtual gives us a time to get that momentum rolling. So it's gonna be pretty great once we get it going.
Yeah, and speaking of getting the momentum rolling, all of these are going to be, like Steve said, recorded, posted. We have a YouTube channel that you can see in the about links as well. So it's all going to be posted there and clipped. Make sure you follow us on Twitch. It's how you'll be able to, talk in the chat and interact with us, and really helps us kind of gauge who's involved and who's a part of the community, so that as we grow and expand, we can reach out to you, see if you want to host something in your neighborhood. But yeah, again, live chat, Q&A, feel free to use it. You do have to follow the Twitch channel to be able to interact with us. We want to hear your questions. Love to get feedback from you as well. And yeah, speaking of feedback, I'm going to hand it off to Tam. You got one more thing to wrap up.
Yeah, next month. So next month, March 11th, super excited, we have Michael Hasenblaus with us. He's the open source product advocate at AWS, and he'll be talking about supply chain security. We also have Muriel Perez McCabe with us as well. She's from GCP. So we'll have her talk about some cloud native security tools. So that is really cool. Definitely check that out. I will post that after this meetup. So make sure you RSVP for that. And then something just to know, we wrap this up, we will send a post-event email with all the links, presentations that we have today, along with the on-demand recording. And with that, we also ask if you'd like to give us feedback. There is a post-event survey that you could take. It takes less than 2 minutes to take it. And there's an incentive. If you do take it, you get a chance to win we will be offering 2 $100 Amazon gift cards. So definitely look out for that link and give us some feedback.
Criticism is welcome. We'd love to hear back as to how we can format any changes, what we're missing in the about links too. You want to highlight some stuff, jobs, community, let us know.
Yep.
Cool. Oh, with Tam just leaving? Where are you going, Tam? You have some announcements to make.
I pressed the wrong button again.
Oh, no.
All right, let's get to news update, right? I have some news updates, so let me start. KubeCon EU is coming up. There is an early bird special. So there's an all access pass. This gives you access to the keynotes, all the sessions, the sponsor pavilion, all the good stuff. And it's only $10. So go catch that early bird, before it expires. There's also a bundle too. So if you're looking to take like your CKA or your CKS, there's a bundle special. So check that out. We'll share the link. It expires, I believe, this weekend. So for anyone that celebrates Valentine's Day, I don't, but you could buy this significant other as a Valentine's Day gift.
That's romantic.
Laughing at me.
Tam, that's our first feedback that we got. So thank you, Alice. Feedback more, Tam. Keep it going, Tam. What else do you have coming?
Right. We should just leave.
If you submitted a call for papers for KubeCon EU, the first week of March is when you find out if you made the cut or not, and that's when the agenda will get announced as well. And then that same first week is when the KubeCon North America call for papers opens. So get ready for that one.
So if you didn't get into EU, you can submit for that one.
Or there's also another really cool event called Cloud Native Rejects. I'll share the link for that. Yeah. If your talk gets rejected, submit to that one.
That's pretty cool. There is one other one I got to throw in there is the CNCF. There's the Cloud Native Security Day that's specific. There's a call for papers for that, and I believe it's going until the end of March. Don't quote me.
February 19th.
February 19th?
February 19th.
Yeah, it's really
February 19th. Okay, yeah, so definitely worth checking out.
Oh,
got a little bit more news?
He's just added that there's the Reject has a podcast called Reject.
Ooh.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, very neat.
Very neat. Steve, I think, so as part of the news, we also want to cover some security issues in the community, right? And Steve has highlighted one that he wants to share.
Well, if anything totally whack happens, there's a new malware, a new Kubernetes malware. Yay! It just doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's fun to see how it works. It is called Hildegard, which is, I don't know who's responsible for naming these things, but I like that. And it was Team TNT threat targeting Kubernetes clusters with an exposed kubelet, taking advantage of the API, running code. And what are they doing? Well, an old classic, mining Monero at scale, because they also propagate. So once they've established a foothold, they communicate to a command and control center, and then they move. So it's a lot like there was a malware, I think last year called Graboid that used the Docker API to do almost the exact same thing. Similar pattern for Kubernetes. So there you go. Unless you're using a crazy old version of Kubernetes, or you've actively exposed your kubelet API, you should be safe. But clearly, there are many people still doing that.
Yeah, upgrade your clusters. We'll just keep repeating it, and it's tough, right? There are some API changes in 1.16, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, maybe, and you can get a discount code on the CKS coming up. Maybe learn a little bit about security.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. The other thing too with communities and updates that we wanted to mention was pod security policies have been officially deprecated. They were due to be deprecated anyways in 1.22 because it had been so long and it had been in beta for so long. So they just figured they'd get ahead of it and start the conversation about what the replacement's going to be. So the community is not dropping pod security policies. There's just the conversation as to how to make it more interactive so that it's actually useful, right? Pod security policies, if you enable them and you don't actually set them up properly with RBAC, just leads to everything not working in your namespaces. So there's talk about, having a baseline policy. Do you have a couple different policies such as restrictive or permissive? And I encourage you to go down to the Slack channel underneath and join the Kubernetes Slack channel. Join the SIG security. There's an active conversation. There's docs by Tim Allclair who are discussing some of the options moving forward. And it's going to be sort of a conversation in the next year as to what their replacement is going to be and what's going to look like. And if you are very opinionated on it and you've maybe run into some hiccups with pod security policies, I encourage you to get involved in that chat, because they are a very good and open community in terms of being accommodating to people. So that's my big update. Anybody else?
That's good.
All right.
First guest.
All right. I'm going to get out of here, Steve. So Taylor Dolezal is our first guest. He is a CNCF ambassador, part of the 119 release team, and works at HashiCorp as a developer advocate, senior developer advocate, I believe. Did I mess anything up there, Taylor? Hopefully not.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, I feel like the point of going on through life is to just add to the alphabet soup of
yes,
titles.
Exactly. Well, I'll let you add on. Looking forward to your talk about secrets, and I'll let you take the floor.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. For those of you that haven't met me yet, my name is Taylor Dolezal, and like was mentioned, I work at HashiCorp as a senior developer advocate. I'm mostly focused on infrastructure, and one of the big themes that we're focusing on this year is secure by default. So I'm very excited to kind of go into this specific workflow today with you and set up Vault as production ready as possible on Azure's Kubernetes service. So very excited about that. Around the internet, you can find me as @OnlyDole just about anywhere, whether that be GitHub, Twitch, Goodreads. And on that note, if you do have any good tomes or stories or anything like that to share, really would love to hear it. I've already exceeded my Goodreads reading goal for the year, so might need to adjust that. But if there's anything worth reading on that front, would love to hear from you on what your favorite books and stories are. Cool. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. What we're going to be doing today is standing up Vault using Terraform in an AKS cluster. And we have, I'm going to show you how to do that in a production ready as possible way. Now, I know that one of the most famous answers in tech is, well, that depends. So when it comes to extending this, really the intent of this demo is to kind of show you how to stand things up. Most things will be in Terraform, some will not. But that's completely intentional, just to kind of show you how these things work. And then feel free to, please please open up issues on this repository that I'm going to share out if you have any questions on this front, or if there's anything that you want to see in this specific workflow. We're going to stand up Vault. That's about as far as we'll go. We won't be extending this or adding in applications in this demo, but very, very excited to kind of walk through these things with you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If I could get some help with just getting that screen up in the fantastic. Also, feel free to yell at me. I'm going in terms of font size, and if you can see something. If you can't, I'm more than happy to kind of help out on that front. So first off, I'm going to actually go ahead and open up my shell, and I'm going to go ahead and run a plan here, and I'm going to kick off this Terraform plan and then just kind of describe it, because it'll take about like 4 to 5 minutes to get up and running. So let's go ahead and do the Terraform workflow. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's first you want to run a Terraform init. Once you've written some Terraform code, that's going to go ahead and pull in all of the providers and modules, and just make sure that your Terraform code is in a good state to start things off with. Very similar to git init when you're starting off building out a repository. So that looks good there. If I wanted to, I could also run a Terraform format or FUMT or FMT just to make sure that all of the syntax of my code looks good. If there were any errors that came up during that process, you would see those file names of things that weren't formatted correctly. It looks like everything's fine here. We're going to run a Terraform Validate just to make sure that everything that I've typed out meets good syntactic practices, and I don't have any kind of variables that were undeclared or unused. Everything looks good on that front. I didn't start using Terraform Validate until I joined HashiCorp, and it was really an interesting thing to find in that Terraform lifecycle and workflow, because it does a static check locally, does not reach out to any APIs to check anything just yet. If I go ahead and run a Terraform plan, that's the first point in time when your Terraform code is going to start reaching out to your cloud and to all of those various resources. So we can see here that I've got I'm using Terraform Cloud to back my state. You always hear, use your company's cloud. That's what I'm doing here. Terraform Cloud supports a whole bunch of workflows and tiers for just about everyone. You can start with a free tier, and really make that a great collaboration tool if you want to work with like between 1 to 5 people. And then if you want to scale up, there are paid plans, there's business plans, there's enterprise plans, there's a whole bunch of things there. But for the sake of this demo, jumping onto the free tier works just fine. And makes it really easy to share out that code and some other nice things I'll get into here in just a little bit. So everything looks good with our Terraform plan. I'm going to go ahead and kick off the apply, and then I'll kind of get into what I'm actually standing up here. So we can see that there's 11 resources, and then I'm getting this kicked off, so we should be good on that front. So let's table that for now, and then I'll kind of dig into the code here. So first off, let's get into the if I can remember the right syntax to hide this, forgive me. I think that I can hide this with, can't remember if it's Command K or B, but I'll figure that out later. First off, so I'm using Terraform 0.14.6, and one of the newer things introduced into the Terraform core language is this concept of required providers. So we can see here I've pinned all of my providers. That's really helpful when it comes to standing up what you the certainty of what you expect in your infrastructure. If you don't go about pinning these resources, you can get into a bad state when a major version comes in. It just you decrease a lot of that certainty that infrastructure as code and that declarative nature give to you. So huge recommendation to go ahead and pin those providers whenever you can. So you can see here are all of the different providers and resources from those providers I'm going to be using today. You can see I've outlined that I want to be using Terraform 14.6, and then I'm using the remote backend, my workspace vault on a K8s. So this is the Terraform Cloud component. I'll show you that after kind of talking through a little bit of this code. Let's get started with the let's talk about the Azure provider. In the source code, there are comments everywhere, and they bring you to where just more information on any of these resources or these providers. So if you have any questions, feel free to check out the links in the source. Again, otherwise, feel free to ask me a question now or later. Again, please at me. I'm a huge fan of answering questions on that front. When I declared the Azure provider, there's not a lot here. I'm able to use Terraform Cloud and set environment variables to authenticate with the cloud that I'm using. And so that's what I've done here. Thus, I don't need to set a lot in here, which is really helpful. Next, we want to set up a network to put this AKS cluster into. And for that, I'm actually going to go about using one of the modules from Microsoft named, network, which does exactly what it says. Gives me that network space to put this AKS cluster into. And then, as you can see, I've stood up a resource group, which is what Azure uses to kind of group everything. That's also not too intensive. That's right here. You can see var dot. I'm using variables to define the name of this project and the location. Jump in here. So we can see I've used some sane defaults. If you fork this project or if you start using it, you can use just about everything here. I think the only thing that might clash is the remote state backend, but that's about it. Otherwise, this is being stood up in the Western Azure region. We're calling this Vault on AKS. And actually, let me go ahead and peek at this. Oh, I do want to confirm that I want to run this Terraform apply. So good thing to check. Always check your work. Awesome. Now that we've walked through network and our resource group, we want to stand up our AKS cluster. So here we're using the latest version of the AKS module. This one is also provided by Microsoft and available on the Terraform registry. I've set a few things in here, namely the cluster version that I want to be using. I'm using a version of 120. I have 3 worker nodes that I'm going to be running within this cluster, and then I want to give those about 100 gigabytes of space. By default, I believe that you get 50 gigabytes, which for this demo won't really affect things, but just nice to see that you're able to change that and configure that to exactly the way that you want it to be. One note about standing up Kubernetes infrastructure with Terraform is that when you get into your workflows and your patterns, it's best to separate out how you instantiate your cluster and separate that from your configuration. So if you were doing further configuration on your cluster, use a different module for that. Try and break that up. You can instantiate and configure all in the same Terraform apply, but we found some weird edge cases to occur when you're trying to do that, just because if you're upgrading a cluster that already exists, or you're trying to get some authentication from the module state within your cluster, that'll lead to some weird edge cases. But if you break up those abstractions, then they won't affect one another. So just as a big heads up there, seen that quite a bit within the community. That gives us our network. That gives us our AKS cluster. One thing that we need for Vault is a key vault. So what that is basically we ask Azure to create a key. We're creating a key with Terraform. We're going to reference that with Vault so that we can actually auto unseal for the first time. There's a few manual steps I'm going to show you in here just to help illustrate the idea of how all of this is linked together. And then at some point in time, I really want to add in the Azure AD components so that we can kind of make this a little bit more automatic and just solely through Terraform. Here is the key that we're actually standing up inside of our key vault that Vault is going to go ahead and reference. This is quite involved just because there are a lot of things to set, and then access policy is where this starts to get a little bit more intense in terms of the learning curve on that front. And then lastly, we have our Vault chart that we want to spin up. So here we can see that this is pretty straightforward. We're giving a repository name and the name of the chart. You'll notice that HashiCorp/Vault is not what is being referenced here. We're just referencing Vault. That's also an area where I've seen a few practitioners and operators get hung up is being too specific in that specific block of definition. The way that I'm going to go about providing the values for this chart, I'm actually able to still use YAML. So I'm able to use this YAML file here where I've specified I want this to be HA. I want this to use RAF storage. This is the tag I want. I want some metrics, and I do want the Vault agent to be injected into all of my pods. So all of the things I want to set here are as they should be. And then I want to set this server HA raft config value. This is going to be the actual Vault configuration. I'm going to specify that in Terraform Cloud because there are a few sensitive variables that I'm going to be using today. So this is going to be what that value actually looks like. So this is the Vault configuration I'm going to use. And then as we go through this demo today, I'm going to show you where all of these things can be sourced. And then lastly, service registration Kubernetes, because that's where we're standing it up. So we're actually going to take this, kind of rewrite some of these values in here, and then manually put that into Terraform Cloud so that we can go about using that inside of our cluster. Awesome. So that is all the code. Let's go ahead and take a look at where this is at. Okay, so this is still spinning up, not a problem. We're going to go ahead and jump into the actual Azure portal here. And if you do have any questions, typically we'll talk fast and move even faster. So if you do have any questions, or if there's anything you want me to pause and call out, please feel free to let me know, and I can kind of dive deeper into any of those topics or concepts. All right, let's bump this up just a little bit. Let's check and see if our key vault's been created. Okay, it has. So Vault on AKS, that's what we want to see. And then I believe we should have our key here as well, if not, not too big a deal. Ah, yes. So one thing that I've learned while standing up this infrastructure is that when you're going about setting up and configuring Vault, there are a lot of moving pieces. I have yet to see a really good flow for good ways to init your Vault cluster, and then to handle auto unsealing and handling all of those permissions. So the reason that I can't list these keys is because actually my CLI, I've created a service principal within Azure, so I can't actually see it with my user account. Now, because I'm in the portal, I can adjust this And then if I were to go into, I believe it's, I can't remember if it's I think that it's within access policies, actually. Yes. So I can see here that the credentials that I'm using for Terraform are here, but my actual my user is not. So I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to go ahead and add in all the key permissions, and then go in here and add my user, just so that I'm able to see this for our demo today. So all right, so that's my user. I'm going to select that and add that in. One thing to note, if you are doing these changes manually, or if you're working within the Azure UI, make sure to hit the save button. That's a very easy thing to miss, and something that I've run afoul of a few times while practicing this demo. So now that I have access to list out these keys and actually work with them, I can see that, great, this is our Vault AKS key. So this is the key we're going to use to actually unseal Vault when we go about standing it up, and when it's time for that first unseal to happen. Cool. Let's go back to the home page. Let's actually see where we're at with the cluster. Awesome. It looks like we're all done. We have our Kubernetes cluster, so we're good on that front. We're going to do some preliminary work to get another service account or service principal stood up, so that we can use that to interact with our Vault cluster, and so that all of our permissions are, what we expect, and to help things operate seamlessly. So first, what we have to do is go into app registrations. This is, I believe, within Terraform, we would want to use the AD provider here. So we can see I've created this Vault K8s service principal in the background, and then these are where I would obtain some of this information here. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and just create this from scratch. I'm going to get rid of this user, and just so that we can kind of go through that whole process. All right, so let's go new registration. Spoiler alert, Vault's K8s service principal. We don't have to specify a redirect URL. All these defaults are fine for this demo, so we're going to go ahead and register that. Fantastic. So now we have values like our client ID and object ID and our tenant ID. I'm actually going to go ahead and grab this client ID and tenant ID and specify this here. So this is the client ID, I believe, and our tenant ID. Cool. So we have part of the puzzle here. Some of the infinity stones. Cool. So next we need a secret. So with that, I'm actually going to go into certificates and secrets, and I'm going to create a new client secret. So this is going to be what I use to just authenticate this service principal with Vault. I'm going to go ahead and create that. Now, when you create this secret, this is the only time you're going to be able to see that is at this point in time. Again, I'm going to be working on some Terraform examples and dynamic ways to generate this, but if you're doing this manually, this is the only time that you're going to be able to get this value. Please don't share with your friends. This will be gone after the demo, but I know this isn't best practice, but this is the only place that you can grab it. As soon as you refresh this page, it's gone. So just be mindful of that if you're following along at home. Let's go ahead and put this in here. Awesome. This Vault name and this key name are already decided. These are already instantiated within Terraform, so we don't need to worry about these. And then lastly, our subscription ID is one thing that we'll need to take a look at as well. So let's go here, and I believe that is in, let's go back to the main screen. And then in our resource group, that's where we can get that subscription ID. So let's go in here, let's grab that, and then awesome. Now we have all of our configuration set. This is what we'll need for our Vault example today. Cool. So I'm actually going to take this, now that we have all of that information, and I'm going to put that into Terraform Cloud. So this is Terraform Cloud. This is my workspace. And what Terraform Cloud is best at is storing your state. Storing your state and providing variables and values. So I don't have to share out these sensitive values here with my team if I'm working in a collaborative way. I can set up my workspace to either to follow a GitOps approach, or I can have it follow a CLI approach, which is what I'm doing today. I'm running this off of my machine and then iterating on this infrastructure. So, and it's nice that I can set all of these values to sensitive. They won't show up in my logs as I'm running these things. And then my team can't come in and, take a look at what this actually is. All they can do is edit it and overwrite it. So it's really a write-only type of access that they have, which is nice. That's what I'm going to go about doing here inside of the Vault config. So I'm able to specify this as a whole string, and we're going to go ahead and save that. Awesome. Because we've updated that, and before we've applied this with a Vault config of nothing. So that's not the correct configuration. So I should be able to go in here and do another Terraform apply, and then that will then upgrade my Vault configuration such that it works with all of the items that I just spun up. The key vault and some of those values and variables there. While that works in the background, I'm going to jump back into my Azure portal, and then I still need to do some work here. So we have set up everything appropriately, but for this key vault, we haven't delegated any access to that service principal that we just set up. So if I jump in here back into access policies and add an access policy, let's go ahead and go to key management. Let's deselect everything. So today, all that we need, I believe, are unwrap, wrap. I'm going to add get and list to these keys so that we can actually, so that Vault can actually see the keys and then go about unwrapping and wrapping everything. So that should be all that we need. Let's go ahead and get that Vault K8s service principal. Awesome. All right, and then make sure to hit save. Otherwise, wouldn't make for a fun demo if things don't work. All right, so that is all set. Let's go ahead and confirm this. Looks like this is all good to go. We have this set changing. That's what this tilde is. Terraform 0.14 gives us concise diffs, so we can see that there are 12 things that are hidden that don't really apply to anything that we're doing here, which is really nice. And then we can kind of see all these different items changed here within our configuration. What's nice about concise diff is just kind of really getting a sense of what's going to change versus showing you things that don't really matter, creating a better operator experience. So that's going to go ahead and run. What about actually getting access to this AKS cluster that we just stood up? What if we wanted to take a look at the configuration and the nodes, and let's say I want to access this via my kube control CLI, because I want to, I actually want to get this stood up and instantiate it. To do that, I can do Azure, or with the Azure CLI, I can go about getting those AKS credentials by running this command here. It's going to ask me if I want to overwrite that configuration, because I've tested this before and have configuration in my kube config for this. So this is okay, and this is okay. Awesome. We're good on that front. Now let's run kube control get nodes. I'm using some Kubernetes shorthand here. So we can see this has been up for about 10 minutes. We can see that we have our 3 worker nodes as we specified. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead and take a look at the pods within this namespace that we're in. Okay, so we have a crash loop back off. That's as expected though, right? Because we didn't have the right configuration for Vault, so it's not going to work as we expect it to. I'm going to go ahead and clear these out. I believe that's the right tag, otherwise I can find that out. Okay, cool. So we're going to clear this out. And then once that comes back, we should see that Vault is going to be in this state of it's going to be sealed and it's not going to be initialized, is the hope. So let's go ahead and see if that's where we're at. It does take a little bit of time for this container to create too, usually about like 60 to 90 seconds, because it's instantiating persistent volumes as well. that's where you're going to be using that Raft consensus storage and those types of configurations. So this step might take a little bit of time. For that, I'm going to go ahead and do one of my favorite commands in the CLI is the watch command, and then we can kind of get a sense of when that's actually scheduled, and then we can actually take a look at the logs and see that everything is as we expect it to be, and it should be working on that front. In the meantime, one of the reasons that Terraform Cloud is working with these variables that I've specified is that while I'm initiating these runs with my CLI on my machine, they're actually running on runners within Terraform Cloud. And so that's how it's able to source these values and then integrate or interact with the APIs on Azure. So that's where you see these runs here. And then if I were to go in here and take a look, you could see, as plans and applies occur, you can manually queue them. And then you can actually introspect your state. So you can see like what changed in that last run, and which is quite helpful. So you can see here, it's going to actually go ahead and highlight some of those things that added, things that removed, and the like, which is quite helpful. Let's go ahead and... All right, so we have a crash loop back off. I'll take a look at that in just a second. Let's take a look at what error is happening. It might have been something that I forgot here. All right. So this is saying that the wrapper key, it's not able to get that. So it looks like I might have messed up something on these permissions here. So I'm going to go ahead and just so I can troubleshoot this, let me go ahead and add in these values and then go ahead and clear out these pods again really quick. Apologies on that front. Live demos are always fun, full of mystery and intrigue, especially when things don't work exactly the way that you expect. All right. So what's happening now is that these pods should schedule, and then they're going to start pinging the key vault and to try to get access to unseal. They won't actually go about doing that because the vault cluster won't have been initiated at that point in time, which is okay, because that's something that we want to do. Okay, so that looks a little bit better. Let's go ahead and check that log output. Might have just been I'll have to go back and take a look at that configuration, but let's go ahead and check the logs of this. Awesome. This is what we want to see. You can see that the stored unsealed keys are supported. It goes to fetch them, but it can't find anything just because Vault hasn't been initialized. Cool. So that is what we want to see. Let's go ahead and make sure that as soon as Vault 0 is reporting in as running, then we can go about standing everything up and getting everything configured. You'll notice that this is quite a bit of manual work to get a Vault cluster up and running, and that's most of that is intended. Security is something that should always be an intention. If we were to go about auto initializing this cluster, we could do that. When we initialize a Vault cluster, we create 5 different keys that can be distributed, and then a root unseal key. So as soon as you create those, you create a situation where that can be intercepted and used, and you want to be very careful about going and generating that. So that's one of the major reasons that just auto init is a huge security concern, is because how do you go about propagating those values around and kind of working with those. That's why that doesn't exist today. Auto unseal is a different story, because if you have any of these Vault pods go down, or if you're running the Vault agent on a machine that goes through a patch or a reboot, that's okay. It's okay for it to unseal after the fact, unless that doesn't jive with your workflow or make sense with what you're trying to do. Otherwise, that's perfectly fine and as expected. If all 3 machines rebooted, for example, and you're not able to go about, you have to manually unseal that, then that becomes quite a bit of a problem. All right, so everything is looking good here. You'll see a 0 out of 1 on the ready, and that's expected. That's because it's not passing that initialization step, which is what we've expected. So I'm going to go ahead and do a let's go ahead and initialize our Vault cluster and actually get this thing on the road and up and running and working. So we can run this command, vault operator init. That's going to go about initializing Vault for the very first time. So I'm going to take these values here. These are things that you should never share out publicly, especially if running in production. So I'm going to go ahead and just going to stick these in my VS Code for use here in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and grab this initial root token as well. And let's go ahead and so we've initialized Vault. So actually, let me just run a Vault status. So we've initialized Vault. Sweet. We can see that that's true here. And then we can see that, we are not sealed anymore either, because as soon as we initialize it, Vault is able to start, is able to use that unseal key within Azure's Key Vault, and we're off to the races. But one of the things that we also have to do is log into Vault for the first time as well. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and take my root token. And then once I've signed in, I can actually start to join these other pods as well. This is the other manual step that's intentional, but just something to be wary of, because it can be pretty involved. All right. So if we do a watch, we can see that Vault 0 should be working, and it is. This is 1 out of 1. Fantastic. We don't have Vault 1 or 2 though. What's going on here? What's going on is these haven't joined to Vault 0 yet. They don't have their configuration information, and they don't know about the other pods that are running, and that's as to be expected. If we don't want any kind of discovery or anything like that going on, if somebody were to break into your cluster and stamp a Vault pod, we wouldn't want it to auto link, right? It knows about the keys that we've stood up, but it doesn't know about these other running processes. So let's go ahead and link those. So here we can do Vault operator raft join. We're going to join that to Vault 0. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and run that for Vault 2 as well. So let's jump back here and do a watch, and we'll see that shortly. So Vault 1 is up and running, and now Vault 2 will, there we go. So now we have a working Vault cluster, and instead of just taking my word for it or taking the CLI's word for it, let's actually go about proxying this. So I'm going to go ahead and port forward Vault here to my local 8200 so we could actually see what's going on with our cluster. I'm going to go ahead and grab this root token. Typically, you don't want to use the root token. You're going to want to generate a user and never use the root token. And we'll see this friendly little warning out on that exact fact right here. So we've done it. We've stood up Vault. We're using the auto unseal capability. And now we can kind of start to work with Vault to create policies, secrets engines, enable those. So if I wanted to, I could stand up Azure and use that backend to create new keys or service principles for my team, that have a TTL so that they don't, last forever, and that we could then work that into our code and be cognizant of auto rotations, or if that key's expired, go to Vault to get a new one. And then, as you can see, obviously, as a HashiCorp product, we have integrations with Console and with Nomad as well. One of the easier items to turn on. So now that I've got this proxied and running to my local host, I can actually just export these values. Let's do a Vault login, and then so I'm using my actual machine with the CLI, and I can log in here. And I can run just locally Vault status, see what's going on, and we can get that same information here. if I wanted to as well, I could even do I can enable the key value secrets. The version 2 would be the one I'd recommend using. And so we've actually enabled via the CLI, just like that, another secrets engine. So Cubbyhole is just scoped to a local user. It's really nice for if you want to, put a piece of information or, a secret there that you want to use later. That's a great place to put it. But if you want to start working with teams and restricting access and such, KV version 2 is what you're going to want to take a look at. We don't have any secrets in here. I believe I have a few examples of that though right here. So if I wanted to go ahead and put my secret inside of that new secrets engine, I can go ahead and do that. I can also see it here in the UI after I log in. Security is wonderful, but definitely has an influence on your UX from time to time. So we can see my secret, and we can take a look at it here because we're logged in with the root token, so we have access to take a look at anything. If I wanted to go ahead and KV, I believe it's get, take a look at that secret, I can see when it's created. With this version 2 of this secrets engine, we can actually get a sense of the versions of this as well. And so, whether this has changed many times, and then audit, what's actually changed here too. There's some nice features, whether you like using the CLI or the UI. My personal favorite's the CLI to kind of go through things, but the UI does offer you some nice things too, like the ability to configure metrics tracking and some usage, if you want to take a look at things in a monthly sense. Then if we wanted to have a visual representation of our RAF storage and how things are performing, we have that ability here as well. We can see everything is running properly and appropriately. And that's it. So we have this up and running in Kubernetes. You could turn on the Kubernetes secrets engine and start to use that to generate access tokens or different types of whatever you need from a Kubernetes sense within your cluster. Vault is a fantastic way to do that and to help keep things rotated and fresh from a security perspective. And then that's it makes for a really great tool in just kind of abstracting away those secrets and doesn't lock you into a specific cloud. Yes, we're using Azure's key vault, but really just as a way to unseal things. This works very similarly in Amazon, Google, and insert your favorite cloud here on that front. But cool. But thank you very much. Loved talking to you today about AKS, Vault, Azure, and would love to answer any questions that you might have.
That was amazing. Taylor, thanks very much. That was in depth. That's probably an understatement. You said yourself there are many manual steps on the way in, and as you were, I think you were about, 2/3 of the way through, and I sent Foster a message on Slack saying, how lucky does this guy think he is? He's got everything's worked so far, and then one thing didn't work.
It's like I felt somebody jinx me. Yeah,
it was, and I think that was on me. I'm gonna give you the questions in the order. Well, there's one from Ryan Sheldrake and I'm actually gonna pop it up because we can do that. When you were talking about Terraform Validate, he came in with this. Can you see that on your screen?
Yes. Yeah. So with Terraform Validate, so if I'm reading that question correctly, I'd say that Terraform Validate is a great point of the workflow in that it's completely static, so it won't actually reach out and touch any endpoints of your infrastructure. What it's doing is really just checking your HCL, your HashiCorp configuration language code, and making sure that you've referenced all of your variables correctly, and that you're using the provider appropriately. It'll let you know, like, if I start using or Kubernetes resources and I haven't pulled in that provider yet, it's gonna shout at me and say, hey, you can't do that. You have to do this first. So that's kind of what it's actually doing. And then the actual plan is what's reaching out and interacting with those APIs, checking the state of what you have in your provider, your cloud, whatever it might be.
Do you think there's a use case for what he's offering in terms of checking endpoints? He obviously has a desire for this.
I think that it's absolutely. One of the big things that we're taking a look at in Terraform 0.14 and every iteration after that is testing. There is a testing provider that's out right now. We have the ability to do custom variable checking. And so I can put in a regex, or like if I wanted to say you can only run this kind of compute, I can have that custom validation set up in my Terraform variable and scope it that way. So that's one way I can go about kind of like testing things, or if I wanted to check a certain endpoint. And then we're really, honestly, I'm a huge proponent and fan of testing and ways that we can get better at that, because when it comes to infrastructure and end-to-end tests, integration tests, contract checks and tests, it gets, there's just, I really haven't seen too many good tools. There's like kitchen sink and, some InSpec and some really great things out there, but those tests, I feel like there just is, kind of a reckoning that needs to happen there. And that's actively what we're looking at, because we feel at HashiCorp that you should just be able to go through that Terraform workflow, run a plan, and get that feedback back to you so that you can write better and more informed infrastructure. So yeah, all that to say, that's a very long way of saying TBD. We hear you, and yeah, personally, I think that's a huge gripe of mine, as well as I want some more testing. I want some more tools on that front. Sentinel works really great, but it's less of a product and more of a suite of features for the enterprise workloads and the SaaS offerings. I've personally done some work with OPA and validating Terraform plans. That's I like using that because it's an open source tool. It's really accessible to people, and it has this great tie-in with Kubernetes as well as the Gatekeeper project.
Awesome. That was a equally thorough answer. Do you find, one last quick one, do you find that because of the manual effort, this is kind of why people tend to take shortcuts around making doing this, managing secrets properly?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a company I worked at that, I kid you not, for 2 years, everyone wanted to use Vault, and they're like, where's it at? And the platform team that was going about standing that up, they just kept running into issues because to do that is very difficult to support a huge range of developers and different teams. I think this was about 20 plus teams and over like 150 developers. So there's so many workflows to try to, create an abstraction for, which, you argue is the best, isn't the best. Personally, I kind of like focusing on things as like a microservice kind of strategy rather than, creating something that works well for everyone. Just start somewhere and then kind of start chipping away. And that's what we ended up doing. But I'd say there is just a lot of confusion around, how Vault works and then how to get that out to the teams, and kind of, like there's really good integration with Spring Boot right now. Not so much for some other languages, like say Elixir or things of that nature. One cool project that I'd recommend people check out is Env Console, which you can use to sync with console. As if you're doing like just some base application configuration. For secrets, it supports Vault as well. If you pass in that endpoint, then you can actually access secrets as environment variables. That is a great place to start. And then when it comes to being an operator and standing these things up, that's something that we're taking a look at too, and just really refreshing a lot of the documentation. And then that's one of the reasons I was honored to come on and talk with y'all today, was because more examples like this, if you have examples like this, or if you want to talk through workflows like this, I'm all ears, because the easier we can make security, the better everyone's going to be.
That was amazing, Taylor. Thank you very much for your talk. That's the end of our questions. That was great. So if some people are probably going to want to go watch this again, it's going to be put in our YouTube channel. It exists on Twitch because it was super thorough, super in depth. And yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Up next, we have Melia Mason. She is the president and co-founder of CyberDEI. She's going to present cyber diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there she is. Hi, Melia. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing? I really enjoyed that presentation as well. I'm going to have to rewatch it. So
yeah, I know. That's what I was thinking throughout. That was crazy. All right, Malia, I'm going to jump out and I'm going to leave it to you.
Awesome. Well, let me see. Make sure. All right. So thank you all, everybody, for having me today. Like they said, my name is Malia. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the president and co-founder of CyberDEI. So a little bit about me. Yes, that is a real photo of me on my ship. I'm a United States Navy veteran. I served as an STG-2, that's a sonar technician, second class, E5, from 2011 to 2015. I'm a cybersecurity engineer. Currently, I'm the vulnerability manager at Hulu. I'm also a small business owner, co-founder, of course, of my nonprofit. I'm also chair of Anita B.org, the technology committee. So Anita B.org is the global nonprofit that puts on the massive Grace Hopper Conference. It's the largest women in tech conference in the world. I also serve as an advisor to 3 local community college cybersecurity programs. I volunteer for Cyber Tech Girls and Gen Cyber Girls. And at the end of the day, I'm an advocate for equal representation. Now, typically we talk about our career progression. This is what I tell the world. This is what I tell recruiters, employers. I went to college, I joined the Navy. Then I came out, did sysadmin work / cybersecurity work, and then went into consulting. When in actuality, here's what really happened. I went to college, joined the Navy, came out, did sysadmin / help desk / cybersecurity work. My mom ended up getting diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. So I took a break in my career. While I was doing that, I decided, let me get an actual degree in this whole cybersecurity thing. And worked at REI part-time just to have the time to be able to wake up at 3 a.m. every day, care for my mom. She passed, and about a year later, and I got right back into it, got back into my sysadmin work, cybersecurity work, and have been doing consulting ever since. So that's been pretty fun. The thing is, though, I realized outside of the military, we're all kind of just treated kind of equal, and and even there, I was the only woman in my division, only woman technician. I realized in the civilian world it's even worse. I have been the first and only woman at every job I've been to, and I keep asking like, hey, where's everybody at? The thing is, you can't just divide it into woman versus man. There's this thing called an intersectionality when we talk about diversity, because all of these things play into what makes you a person. What is your economic background? Where did you grow up? What world did you come from? Did you come from the Western world? Did you come from the Eastern world? What language did you grow up with? All of these things all play into our backgrounds and make us these complex beings that we are. And that's the part that I think we're starting to figure out when it comes to the world. We can't be put into these little boxes. And that's what inspired us to start CyberDEI and focus on that intersectionality piece of, yes, I'm not just a woman at work. I'm also a veteran at work. I'm also a disabled veteran at work. I also come from a low-income background where I was the first-gen college student. So there's a lot of stuff that makes us us, and that's what we aim to make at CyberDEI, is a place where everybody can feel safe and included in their pursuit of learning more about cybersecurity. Because at the end of the day, a lack of diversity, equity, inclusion leaves underrepresented folks facing racism, sexism, ageism, ableism, homophobia, religious persecution, and overall discrimination in the workplace and at home. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. What can you do at home? As my granny used to always say, leave the world better than you found it. You can get involved. Hey, in your own community, you're the tech expert. How many of y'all are, help desk for your family? Teach them about cybersecurity. Teach them how to get their accounts secure. Teach them how to not click on things through Facebook, etc. Share your tech knowledge on social media. For those of us who remained on social media, that's been my last bastion. I've kept my Instagram account simply because that's where all my non-tech friends are. So I do at least a weekly update of saying, hey, here's your cyber tip of the week. And I actually have had people engage, and actually some of my non-tech friends have attended my tech talks. And again, talk to your family about cybersecurity, stay informed, up to date. And you can also join the fight against disinformation. That's one of my passion projects. This, you can lose, or you can use all of the different knowledge that we have, compare it to like a phishing email, right? Pause before you click, look who sent it, research. These are all similar tips that we can use and then engage in the community. And then that's how we can get our own cyber selves kind of out of the shadows and actually involved with people and get them excited about it. You can be a cyber hero. Shout out to my favorite hero, Wonder Woman, right there. You could probably see her shield in the background. Here's an example. Is recently I shared a post on another forum that I'm part of, another Slack channel. It's my local Long Beach Women in Tech channel. And I said, hey, here's a general PSA. I think this was right around the election time. And I said, you need to be careful about disinformation. And I shared screenshots and I shared all of the different steps that I went through in researching this post, double checking facts and showing my methods. And I had a lot of really awesome interaction. A lot of people posted and they said, hey, thank you so much for posting. I didn't know. I said, oh, can we share these tips with others? And that's the thing is, engage with your friends, because these are also fellow tech folks who don't necessarily know everything about cybersecurity. Now I have them asking me, hey, what are more classes we can take on cybersecurity? What are other tech talks we can attend? So that thing is engaging. You never know who you're going to pull in to cybersecurity, because at the end of the day, we know our diverse backgrounds from cybersecurity make us better at our jobs, because our threat actors are from all over the place. So we should absolutely reflect that. Because this is one of my favorite pieces of artwork. We are all connected at the end of the day. This wonderful technology, I think I saw people from London, people all over the world are connected. We're all interacting with one another. So we need to make sure that cybersecurity is accessible and is equitable for everybody. So that is my intro. I'm going to stop sharing and ask me questions. Let's go.
Awesome. I think we got everybody in here, right? Steve's still trying to figure out how his mute button works, but
I wasn't sure if my voice worked, but anyway, I'm not very technical.
Yeah. No, I think you really touched on a core concept there. Cybersecurity isn't just the world that we live in, right, in our day-to-days, but it's also our families and how they approach the internet too, right? So I really like that. That's great.
Yeah, and we're seeing too, like just a couple of weekends ago, one of my girlfriends reached out to me and said, hey, one of my friends was hacked. Can you help out? And I was like, sure, let me take a weekend. As it turned out, it was a family member that got sucked into QAnon, and she had just enough knowledge to be dangerous. And of course, no MFA, none of the security things. And he had a very easily guessable password. So she was able to get into his accounts, and I was able to get in and help him kind of untangle all of that mess and taught him about MFA, et cetera, et cetera. And they treated me like a wizard. I was like, no, this is very, very basic things. And this is what I try to encourage other folks in cybersecurity is, get out there, talk with people about this, because the more that we can just have these basic cybersecurity tips and basic knowledge that everybody should know, that makes our jobs easier too.
Mm-hmm.
If MFA was just a regular factor of everybody's life, man, it wouldn't be such a push or such a struggle at work, right, to implement it. So I always encourage people to consider that. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that I'm like the resident, I'm the cyber expert now for all my friends. Was I hacked? What is this?
And the first thing you tell people is to stop using that shirt behind you. Don't use Microsoft XP.
Yeah, that's always as a consultant, whenever I'm doing a security assessment in a new environment, if I see XP, I'm just like, all right, first of all, first on my list.
All right. Well, I think Tam has some questions lined up for you, and we all do. So Tam, start us off here.
Yeah, I do. I dig the ugly sweater. Thank you.
My beloved Microsoft ugly sweater.
Thank you, Microsoft. So if an individual or an organization wanted to start their own DEI initiative, where would you recommend they start?
That's a great question. So it can be hard to get started. A lot of times you need leadership involved. And this is where, I'm going to call out, all the white guys here. Y'all are the dominant factor in tech. You are allies. You got to be involved. This is not a one team sport. This is not all of us underrepresented folks arguing for this. It's the guys too. Y'all play a huge role. And this is where we've seen an explosion of ERGs, so that's the employee resource groups, that have become really popular in the last couple of years. And we saw a ton of them last year. And it's been fantastic because it's these ERGs that are internal that are actually driving the changes for the businesses, and who are, coming back and saying, hey, where are we sourcing our people? How are we recruiting? And they're getting involved in all the different areas. And especially because it's a group, it's easier than just one individual fighting. This is a group. And again, you can pull in those allies and you can pull in those folks and you can have these conversations. So if you don't have an ERG at your company yet, definitely look into how do you start one, start to gather some allies. That's where it can start. There's a lot of other really awesome groups out there involved in technology. And we're always welcoming of, not just women in tech or women in privacy, whatever. We encourage guys there too, because I always say if it's just a bunch of women complaining about how not cool it is to be the only woman in the workplace, well, yeah, we all understand that. But the guys need to hear that too, how there's certain either microaggressions or there are certain inherent biases that happen with women being the only people or the only women in the workplace when it comes to guys. The typical women have to get the coffee, the women take the notes, the women end up doing project management work, the women end up doing all the documentation. That's just something we all know. But unless we engage the guys in the conversation too, y'all may not know that this just happens. So.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to pull up.
Hit the nail on the head.
I'll pull up the banner there. I know we have it listed too, but if you want to find more information about CyberDEI, I know you all also have a very active Slack channel. I've been on it, and I've learned a lot just going through the Slack channels, and there's a lot of different perspectives there. So it's really cool to see that you put this together. So
yeah, I appreciate that, especially because we're all, it's all of us combined. So then, and we're all coming from different areas. I've got GRC knowledge in my background. I'm doing VM right now. I'm having to get into cloud now and container security. So it's awesome that we can kind of pull on, not just teaching the entry level folks, but then all of us senior folks can then say, hey, I got a question about this. Does anyone have an experience? Oh, I'm going through a SOC 2 audit. What's a good tool? What company do y'all recommend for an audit? So it's not just your typical entry level, but then there's a ton of resources. There's also fun things like sharing memes or your pet pics or what did you cook that day? Just something not to think about technology. That's what I really enjoy that we do.
Yeah. And you have some cool mentorship programs where people can reach out and find a mentor. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, we do mock interviews. I've given quite a few. And we actually just celebrated our 35th hire. So we've helped 35 people at varying stages of their career, senior, entry, whatever. 35 people have gotten their careers in cybersecurity. So, and it's a teamwork. So
totally.
That's pretty awesome. Shall I jump in there, Tam? Because I've got a question that's burning.
Awesome. Go for it.
So cybersecurity is it spans the globe. I think that's very easy to say that, and it touches on a variety of age ranges, cultures. It's a big space. And what I'm wondering is, have you seen elements. I'm going to actually call on like the CNCF, for example, where they're very good at recognizing pronouns, for example. Surprisingly so. So have you seen any really positive moves like that in the industry that, just to call out some people who are doing a good job, because we tend to talk about the bad job.
Right. Yeah. And it's this, I've been involved in some sort of, diversity, equity, inclusion advocacy for, holy cow, at least like 20 years now. And I've seen way more movement in the last couple of years than I have ever before. And I really appreciate that. I'm seeing on drop-down menus for applying to jobs where they're asking, actually, I just saw Reddit did this really, really well on their job application form, where it's drop down and say, what are your preferred pronouns? What's your preferred name? What gender do you most identify with? And so then it's adding in all this inclusivity. We're also seeing last year, there was a big push, I think GitHub led it, in getting rid of things like blacklist, whitelist, block list, allow list. And so, and it's now we're having these conversations in the cybersecurity community. It's like, do we still use black hat, white hat? Because that also implies, black is bad, white is good. That's still not good. So there's, even in my own verbiage, whenever I'm giving my technical talks, I talk about ethical hackers versus threat actors. So there's ways that we can work this into our vocabulary change. So I have seen a lot more inclusivity, and I was really appreciative that, not to get too much into politics, but the White House day one on their drop-down form, it was a huge win for LGBTQ folks, where they actually asked in their contact form, we're asking for pronouns. What are your preferred pronouns? What language would you like this in? And so that bringing more people to the table. So yeah, I have seen a lot more shift, which is really, really nice. And I hope that we continue to push, because I think also COVID was the great equalizer, right? We're all at home. We're all lonely, we're all stuck in our houses, and it kind of made everybody the same. Everybody that had children, all having to deal with screaming kids in the background. And it didn't matter what level you were, entry level, whatever. So I think that also drove a lot of those thoughts of that, how can we be more inclusive? How can we be more flexible, offer families more flexibility during the day? Kids are having to go to school and you're having to go to work. That's a challenge. So now we're seeing actually more allowance for parents in the workplace, that more flexibility that women have been driving that change for many, many years. Now we're seeing, we're all equal here. Dads, moms, everybody have to deal with kids. So we saw a big push to fix that. So, and I think a lot of other companies are following along, and that includes remote work, right? Because remote work, that can discriminate against, if you don't have remote work, then that discriminates against people who aren't in the big cities. Or again, those parents, maybe you're a single parent, and you can't do that commute. You got to pick your kids up from school, and remote work makes that so much better. So.
Yeah, well, you have a couple thank yous in the chat for joining. Yeah, the great leveler. That was a great quote. Yeah, you mentioned the inclusive naming. I thought that was a really good initiative. The CNCF pushed at KubeCon, and yeah, it's interesting too, like to see how forgiving I think a lot of people are, because it's just language. It evolves over time, right? And it makes sense to make things more inclusive. Why not as you go along with things? Just as an example, are there any kind of like golden standards, and obviously like it's not always moving forward, right? Sometimes there's like a negative in a company and it's like, okay, well, we have to fix this, right? But are there any standards, any companies that you look to and you're kind of like, I really like this initiative? It might not be there yet, but it's something that is pushing towards, in the next 10 years towards something that's a lot better.
Yeah, you know what? I always judge a company off of what's their board? What does their board look like? As some of you may know, the state of California passed a rule that women have to make up, I think, 2/5 of the board. So it took a lot of pass to get women into leadership. So I look at companies that have a more diverse board. I also look at their job description. We know in cybersecurity, we have the worst job descriptions on the planet. I'm going to call that out there, because they ask for, 4 roles of one. You want a CISB, but it's an entry-level job, and you also need to have SOC 2 experience, but you also need to be a developer. And it's like, okay, what? So I should look at job descriptions, because there can be inherent biases when it comes to job descriptions, because you assume a certain level of exposure, knowledge, etc. Certifications are expensive, y'all. Like, requiring a GIAC means that you had to have access to thousands of dollars to get some of those certifications. So that then cuts out how many of those economically disadvantaged folks. So some of the companies that I see doing a good job, I'm always a big fan of Netflix. They reflect diversity within their company. They have it front and center when it comes to their job descriptions. They're also leading Hollywood in having the most women, the most people of color, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera, writing, producing, directing, all of that sort of stuff. So that's kind of what I look at. Like I said, I was very impressed with Reddit's job description just recently. And I've seen a couple other tech companies where they got rid of, say, their degrees. That was a big thing too, was almost all the tech companies were requiring these computer science degrees. I don't have a computer science degree. Does that mean I'm not as good at my job? Maybe. Ask my boyfriend who has a CS degree, and he said, yeah, I learned everything on the job. So there's different things that you want to look at, and I think we're doing a good job of moving in that direction. And I would like to see more companies changing their job descriptions, because at the end of the day, I'm sure we've all heard this statistic, but women will only apply if we feel that we're 80% qualified. Yeah. Men will apply when we're 20% qualified. So yeah, adjusting those job descriptions and making them more down to earth and real. I've been on the other side of writing a job description, and I got it back, and I was like, that is not what I do at all. I'm not even qualified for this job. What are you doing? So changing that, because then you'll have more applicants. That's the number one question I always get is, hey, how do we, no one other than, like, guys are applying to our positions. How do we get more ladies? Mm-hmm. Let's look at your job description first of all.
and you need to have the channels too, and the outreach, right? If you're not looking, you're not actively going out, then it's going to be tougher to grow that community, right?
Yeah, and we saw a bigger push into the HBCUs. So that's the historically Black colleges and universities. And we found that in the tech industry, they were completely ignored. And there was actually, I think famously, some of the FANG companies, not to call them out in particular, some of the FANG companies actually had written into their recruitment not to go there. And that recently came to light. And so that's a big thing, is then how big a chunk of underrepresented individuals are you just leaving out? So we've seen a bigger push and more focus on taking your university recruiting events and not just going to your Stanfords, your MITs, your UCLAs, your Cal Polys, whatever, and Berkeley, and going to your Howards and your other historical Black colleges, and that's another game changer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the creation of roadmaps too, right? It's also, how do you get to FANGs? I was like blessed because I didn't have a CS degree. I came from an engineering background, but I was already sort of in the tech community, and people are like, hey, you need to do this, and here's who you need to talk to. And, if you're just basically saying, hey, we're not even going to go into those areas altogether, but you're not actively giving them a roadmap or like a method to learn more, then you're just really gatekeeping, right? So
exactly.
It's awesome. And I think, like, not to specifically call them out, but like Apple invested a bunch of money in Atlanta, like building a coding school and things like that. It's like that. Those are the initiatives that hopefully it's a pipeline to get good talent in, right?
Yeah, I'm not associated with Microsoft at all. I've never worked there. I find this sweater hilarious. However, Microsoft has invested a lot into Girls Who Code and Black Girls Code. So those sort of initiatives, you're building out, you're making that early investment, getting the kids, early in school, and encouraging them to seek that out. Like, I took one programming class in college, and that's why I didn't get a CS degree, because C++ is hard, y'all.
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of friends, and they say we need to make IT sexier and cooler, like when we're younger. And I'm hoping to do that through like gaming and things like that. It's starting to catch on, but hopefully we'll get there. Fingers crossed.
I think it's getting there. Minecraft, that's how my niece and nephew got into like programming. Well, programming was that, I guess I haven't played Minecraft in a while, but the redstone and setting all that up, and now there's like actual like lesson plans with Minecraft, and I was like, yes, I'm here for it. Let's go.
Nice. Hey, so Malia, you shared some advice in an interview that you did with Women in Security that I wanted to share with our audience, because I know it really resonated with me. So you said, when you get your foot in the door, hold it open so people like you can come in behind you. Could you explain where that came from?
Yeah, so it's kind of a self-deprecating comment for me, because I actually have a size 12 foot. I'm a 5'11" woman. I'm very large. And I always said that when I was getting out of the Navy and getting into the civilian space, for us veterans, it can be kind of hard to transition, because a lot of times it can be hard to prove our value and our worth and that we have experience in the civilian space. So I was so determined. I just kept applying, and I was like, you know what, when I get my big size 12 foot in that door, I'm never going to let it shut after me, because that's a big thing too that we find, because not all underrepresented folks are good with one another. I've encountered some toxic women in my career as well. But the thing is, like, if we hold open that door and help others come in, like give that referral, if we occupy these spaces, then a lot of times, I'm sure y'all have encountered this, a lot of times in cybersecurity, a lot of these jobs are referral only. They never get posted. My current role was never posted online. It's my buddy messaged me on LinkedIn, was like, hey, I need some help, you free? And that's the kind of thing, that's how this works. It's that old school, golf course thing where women were kept out of the golf games and they would make all their business deals or whatever. So that's why we need to occupy these spaces, and then make sure you help somebody else. Once you make it, whenever I tell any of my mentees, once you make it, turn around, help the next person, give them a referral, teach them how to do this, teach them how to do negotiations, interviewing, whatever. If we all help one another, there's a pipeline problem solved right there. And it's all a community, and you never know who you're going to work for next. That's the other thing too, is like, we're a tiny community.
Yeah.
Like, we all know each other after a while, help each other out.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to somewhat break the mold. I know we had some other questions, but Taylor wanted to ask a question, so I'm going to bring him in real quick to wrap things up. All right, Taylor, welcome back.
Oh my goodness, where was I? No, happy to be back. One question I had, and just kind of an observation. So over the holidays, really liked all the features that were available from the different streaming platforms, and so was able to watch videos of family. And one of the things that we watched at my mom's behest, I've read like Brene Brown's several of Brene Brown's books, and there was a Netflix special that she had, and it was really focused on, she's a shame researcher, for those of you that aren't familiar with her, and just being vulnerable and transparent, and just like having real interactions with people. And one of the things that I liked that she brought up was that these kinds of conversations can make people feel uncomfortable because they aren't saying the right thing, and they are afraid of coming off the wrong way. And then she followed that up and said, that's the people that are really, the people that really have a problem with, with anything. Those are the people not saying anything. It's the people that aren't afraid, aren't the ones that are, trying to have these conversations. So don't be afraid. You're going to mess up. You're going to fall on your face. It's all good. This is how we learn. And so in that, that's all declarative statements. But my question's kind of like, have there been any interactions like that where you felt like, or any kind of, advice that you have to give on starting those conversations? And, if you see something that like looks or doesn't feel right, going about kind of engaging people, aside from just like, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point, right? There was I'm blanking on who coined it, but they said silence is violence, right? In the military, we always had that, that bystander intervention training, where it's like, if you see something, say something. And look, we're not going to get it all right. I understand as a white woman, I am never going to understand what it's like to be a Black or brown woman or an Asian woman. Like, I have certain privileges because of my skin color, and I understand that. And as long as you constantly learn, and as long as you constantly are willing to engage these conversations and have these safe places to talk about it, that's a big deal. And that's something I always open up for myself. And there are those individuals that they will open up those safe spaces where you can have these discussions. I appreciate the guys at work, because again, I work with all guys, that they can ask me, hey, why do you always say your pronouns? What is the deal with pronouns? They understand that they can ask me because I won't judge them. And I think having those conversations and making it known that you're a person that you can talk and have these discussions with, that's what I think we need more of, and not afraid to say something. I would rather somebody say something and get it slightly wrong than not say something at all. And I think we're seeing that with a lot of companies where, especially during the Black Lives Matter movement, we just saw, cool, you put up a black box, but did you actually do anything? What did you do after that? Like, I'd rather you say something that's slightly wrong. You made an attempt. You're at least trying. You're trying to understand the issue. You're trying to change. And that's where these ERGs, again, to call back to them, they can be a great place to then have these conversations and have these discussions, and find your people. There was one person I attended a talk, and I wish I could remember off the top of my head right now, but they talked about the varying levels of allyship. And there was the folks that are just on the edge. They're like, oh, I don't know. And then maybe they'll say something, or maybe they'll say something private. Then they'll say something in public. And so there's these other things. And I've taken some of my guys aside in the places that I've worked, and I've had conversations with them after an incident happened at work and said, hey guys, let me explain to you why that made me upset. Let me explain to you why that was wrong, what happened, why I felt demeaned, why I felt belittled, and let's talk about how you can correct this in the future. And when I approach it that way, take emotion out of it and kind of do it have a learning and a teaching opportunity, that's been really receptive. And that way, and I appreciate that they were like, hey, you know what, I'm sorry for not stepping in. How should I do that in the future? And those are the kinds of conversations that I would love for more people to have, and make this normal. Make this normal to kind of talk about these things and step in. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been in a meeting and all of a sudden, it's, again, me, I'm the only woman in the room, and things are said, and I'm like, oh, I'm very uncomfortable. I'll speak up because I don't care, served in the Navy, whatever. However, I always have in mind, like, who wouldn't speak up and who wouldn't change this culture, who wouldn't drive this. And I try to keep them in my mind whenever I speak about something as, who's going to follow me? Are they going to step into a toxic work environment, or can I try to just let's steer away from the locker room talk, guys? Let's get a little more professional. So it's very nuanced, but you're right. We're not always going to get it right, and that's okay as long as we continue to learn, as long as we continue to research. Look into new things that come out. Especially the LGBTQ community, gender is very nuanced, and there's new terms and there's new definitions that come out that might be confusing. Just take the time, look it up, and see, what is this? And don't always expect your underrepresented folks to explain everything all the time. Do your research first and say, hey, can you clarify some things for me? And I think if that approach, that way you're not putting the burden of education on their shoulders. Say, I did my research, can you clarify a few points for me? There you go, you open that conversation. And then you also point yourself out as, I'm an ally, I'm willing to talk about these things. I am comfortable, I am a safe person. And having that safe person at work for an underrepresented person, I tell you, it means the world. Especially when you're the one and only. If you have a couple of people you can reach out to and be like, man, guy was such an asshole. And then they're like, I know, right? So that can be so helpful if you're the only person in the room.
I think Alice made a pretty good comment about that. I'll just show it. It's,
yep.
Yeah. Did you see that? Yeah. Surround yourself with women who would mention your name in a room full of opportunities. Yeah. I think that's it, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's just working your day and day to be that person that, you know, people respect and can go to. So
yeah, and that's also, you know, that's also our allies. That's regardless of gender, is, you know, recommend other people, help each other out, and especially at the end of the day in cyber, you may be working with a person of the future. So almost a little self-serving, but everybody wins at the end of the day.
Awesome. Well, this was a great chat, and thanks both you guys for coming. I know, you know, it's an hour and a half out of your day. Hopefully you guys get to hang around because we do have a couple other things to wrap up with. I don't know if Tam or Steve, you want to jump in here or you want me to take it, but there are all mine. All right, sweet. So there's going to be, I'm basically going to clip this. I'm going to separate both your talks on Twitch and on YouTube. So if people want to catch it, they can catch it there after, and we'll give you the links to share as well. There's a post-event survey. The link was broken earlier. Make sure I fixed it. It works now. Sign up, give us a response, and, you know, win some gift cards. And I think, Taylor, you were joking, right? It's going to be Daler Dolezal, right? It's going to be doing the survey later. So yeah, everybody's welcome, and we'd love to hear your feedback. CFP links, I think we posted about those. If not, I will be dropping them in the about link. There is the Rejects podcast as well that Waleed mentioned. He also has a bunch of good CKS resources if you are interested. And lastly, the air meet. We're going to go hang out. I'm going to go mix a drink because it's the end of the day here. I don't know if it's the end of the day for you, Taylor, but I know Steve, it's like 9 o'clock where he is. So he'll
9:30.
He'll be drinking Guinness, unfortunately for him, or something like that. But yeah, there's the air meet link at the bottom. We'd love to come, bring some questions, chat with us, and we'll be around for a little bit longer. But thanks again to our presenters.
Yeah, let's look out for the post-event email with all the links, all the resources, to everything we talked about. Thank you so much for our speakers. And then, I don't know, I have tons of questions, Malia, so hopefully you can join us in the air meet. And we should definitely keep this conversation top of mind. So it'd be awesome if the both of you could come back and continue the conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, y'all.
Take care,
everyone. See everyone in the lounge.